Good morning, you're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Dani Laurel.
And I'm Jess De Los Santos. Here are the biggest stories to kickstart this trading day, Thursday. A tale of two forecasts. Moody's Analytics expects the economy to grow at a faster pace this year, while S&P believes the country may experience some economic scarring.
As COVID-19 cases continue to drop, the government says it's not far-fetched to de-escalate the so-called new normal or alert level 1. That's by next month.
Citicorp REIT defers its listing date on the local bourse. That's on the back of what it described as strong investor demand for the company's 6.4 billion peso IPO.
And another public offering, the SEC approves the IPO of San Miguel-led Bank of Commerce. We begin our broadcast with a rosier outlook for the Philippine economy. That's courtesy of Moody's Analytics.
The economic research firm now expects the country's GDP to expand by up to 6.2% this year, higher than its earlier growth forecast of 5.6%. If realized, this will make the country the second fastest growing economy in Southeast Asia for 2022, only behind Vietnam. Moody's Analytics says the Philippines, together with Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Vietnam, all recovered quickly from a weak third quarter in 2021 and posted a strong rebound in the fourth quarter. Meanwhile, S&P expects Philippine GDP to grow by 7.4% this year. This falls within the government's target range of 7 to 9%. S&P also sees GDP to grow above 7% in the next few years. However, it warns that an economic scarring is in the offing, noting the country may not be able to recover losses caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. With COVID-19 cases on the decline, the government is now hopeful that the Philippines can finally transition into the new normal. But a health expert says it's not over until it's over, especially with the possible impact of the upcoming 2022 elections. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro gives us a front seat to the story.
2 years since the first COVID-19 cases, the country is getting ready to transition to a new normal. Interior Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya said if COVID numbers continue to decline, then it's possible by March the country could transition to Alert Level 1.
Alert Level 1 is the new normal. Kung ano yung capacity ng venue, wala na tayong limitations doon, provided that all minimum public health standards have to be followed.
It would simply be like pre-pandemic times, but with face masks, contact tracing form, and disinfection. And if things go as hoped for, the Health Department and the National Task Force Against COVID-19 say, by the fourth quarter of 2022, we could get rid of face masks too.
By the fourth quarter, sapagkat by that time, kung 90 million Filipinos ay fully vaccinated, that's already 90% ng ating populasyon.
Herbosa said the maskless transition would be slow as to avoid possible resurgence similar to what European countries.
Magsuot pa rin tayo ng mask sa mga enclosed spaces o yung mga high-risk na lugar. Palagay ko sa open air, pwede na tayong hindi mag-mask.
But there are still wild cards in the country. The biggest card is the possibility of a new and more dangerous variant of COVID-19. But the wilder card is the 2022 elections. Health experts are worried that the election fever is creating so many potential super spreader events.
Yung handshake, may mga nagsiselfie, meron improperly yung pagsuot ng mask.
Under COMELEC campaign rules, actions requiring physical contact are not allowed. Malaya said, with the thousands of attendees in these sorties, even they are overwhelmed. Herbosa suggests only fully vaccinated individuals will be allowed to participate in in-person campaigns. But with health protocols already being disregarded, enforcing a vaccination policy in the campaign activities will just as be another long shot. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, we are One News.
But for National Task Force Against COVID-19 Special Advisor Ted Herbosa, Filipinos could do away with wearing face masks by the fourth quarter of the year. That's if 90% of the entire population gets vaccinated against COVID-19. Meanwhile, Octa Research fellow Nick Austriaco said that it's no longer surprising to hear the start of the so-called maskless conversation in the country. This as other nations have already removed the restriction.
Our hope is that we too, here in the Philippines, will have that kind of population immunity, not only because there are cities, including the National Capital Region, that have attained 80% of their population for vaccination, but many of the other urban areas of our country, according to the NVOC, are already over 70% of adults and eligible vaccinees. So this, coupled with significant numbers of Omicron survivors, the Philippines is expected to enjoy a period of calm and stability because of our significant population immunity.
All right, Dan, stocks up yesterday to a two-year high, but a lot of moving parts today, particularly when it comes to monetary policy decisions. Tell us more.
Okay, Jess, it's been pretty topsy-turvy. Recall in the past few days, actually, we already breached 7,500 and then we were back to 7,200. And now it seems to be the case that we're back on that uptrend, trading at 7,455. That's already up by 0.03%. So I guess quite unchanged here. But yes, as you mentioned, yesterday's rally was fueled by the optimism of those easing tensions over in Eastern Europe. Plus, we did have remittance data hitting an all-time high. But you did mention we have a lot of things to be watching out for. BSP rate decision later today. However, perhaps not a lot of surprises here. All 20 analysts surveyed by Bloomberg see the Bangko Sentral holding their rates. Of course, this is at a record low at 2%. You've also got other issues here in terms of yesterday's move. Let's take a look at how the movers are doing this morning. You've got Metro Pacific up by 5 7/10%. Converge up as well. That was the best performer yesterday, up by 4 7/10%. But still a lot sitting out this continued rally, if you could call it that. Aboitiz down by 1.8%. And Mondanisan, one of the best performers, pulling back by 1.18%. A lot of the movers yesterday were really the property stocks, consumer-related stocks, amid all of those, OFW remittances. It's very much related to the investments of OFWs in property sector and in terms of consumption here. And I just want to highlight a couple of things that we had mentioned in our banner. More fundraising to be coming. You've got San Miguel Corporation that has received the SEC Go for basically a 60 billion peso fixed rate bond offering that's going to be offered in several tranches. But another subsidiary of San Miguel, that is Bank of Commerce, has received the go signal for the maiden offering. That's around 3.4 billion pesos. And the over allotment could bring that up to 4.2 billion pesos. However, there's also one that was supposed to be listing today that is going to be postponing that, and that is C-REIT. They will be postponing their offering to no later than February 22. So just a couple of days there. They said that they're struggling with the completion of the IPO shares at the depository simply because there's an over-allotment and there's too many people subscribing to this IPO. Now, here to discuss about all of this and more, we have AAA Equities' President Matt Cabangon back on our show. Hi, Matt. Welcome.
Hi, Danny. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, Matt, let's kick off with the general bourse and where this direction is really going here. A lot of things are moving, but now you could see that there is quite a downward trend when it comes to the alert level, even possibly alert level 1 by March. You've got this story, of the BSP being accommodative, but still you've got more geopolitical tensions, offshore tensions, oil, Russia versus Ukraine, and also the Fed moving the index as well. So where's the pull going to be going?
Danny, you're absolutely right. I personally have a hard time making sense out of this market. The last few days have exhibited really high volatility, up and down by 1% every day almost. And these sort of counterbalancing forces seem to be pushing us just depending on where headlines are going. Right now, of course, top of mind is the Ukraine tensions, which seems to have eased. But really, I think the big driver here is the Fed and what's going on with U.S. inflation. I personally believe that even though the BSP has been reassuring the public that they'll remain accommodative, it's going to be very hard for them to stay the course if inflation elsewhere runs hot and all the other central banks raise rates. Not to mention commodities prices keep moving up. So I do think these are factors that the BSP has their eye on, and something that, in my opinion, casts doubt on whether our central bank can keep policy accommodative for as long as they say they can.
Okay, but Matt, there's the expectation already that the BSP will hold at least today. And then there's a pricing in already of a 50 basis point hike over the US on March. So has the market already priced in this differential, this spread? Or will there be a major movement, or I don't know, a sell off, a pullout of foreign funds should the Fed still move?
Well, in my opinion, uh, the local market has not priced it in. I mean, let's just take a look at stock markets comparatively. The US stock market is down several percentage points off their recent highs, their recent all-time highs. While the Philippines has been a huge outperformer. We've basically been on an uptrend for the last several months with really barely any significant pullback from the recent highs. So I do think the market still does firmly believe that even if the Fed does raise in March, that maybe the BSP won't follow, and local equities will keep aloft. So I do think that this is something that investors should look out for, because I do think there's significant chance that our local equities pull back a lot after our recent run of our recent hot streak.
What about fundamentals in the domestic economy? To what extent do you see this being priced in? Whether it's remittances driving consumer stocks, or even just reopening stocks? Are you seeing a trend already that things are going to the cyclical stocks, to the stocks that like properties, or even banks that haven't really recovered last year?
Danny, that's actually one of the themes I've noticed in the last 2 months, where last year we sort of had these hot COVID stocks, right? So we had AC Energy, we had Converge, we had the telcos really all around, and they had a massive year last year. And what we've seen to start 2022 is the opposite. Suddenly properties, suddenly banking are the hot stocks, and it's these COVID, it's the COVID stocks that are getting hammered. Of course, except today with Converge's news, but really it has sort of been a re-emergence of value in the local bourse. It's no longer all about alternative energy or whatever sexy new thing. So this has been a theme playing out in the local market. Although fundamentally, I am a bit concerned, since earnings aren't quite yet there. They have been improving, but the multiples are still quite lofty, and I'm not sure that the fundamentals are there to really give our market that kick to get it to some, let's say, 8,500.
Okay, now speaking of Converge, Matt, what is your intel and why is it still on the rise?
So Converge has been, at least for the last week, an absolute bloodbath in the market. As you can see in the chart there, it's just taken a huge beating. But lately, the last 2 days, it's bounced back quite significantly. I think to the tune of 10% or something like that. And really, what's going on here is that yesterday, Mr. Dennis Uy, of course, the company's chairman, said that they have essentially closed a deal with Elon Musk's SpaceX program, which essentially will aim to provide wireless internet from outer space. As crazy as that sounds, to someone who has never heard of the concept before. Now, there's basically no details behind this deal. All we know is that SpaceX will be leasing some ground assets from Converge. We don't know what the rates are. We don't know what assets exactly. Even the commercial launch of Starlink, the internet project, even that sort of still in flux. So this really, in my opinion, is sentiment driven. But I mean, hey, if you attach the world's wealthiest man's name to a Filipino stock, how can that hurt, right? So this is exciting for the company. I do hope the economics are there, and this isn't sort of a flash in the pan, sentiment driven pop.
All right, well, 5.8% up this morning, converged 29 pesos. And finally, Matt, just a quick question on Figaro. They jumped close to 9%.
So Figaro has recently released their earnings, and they have been really, really encouraging. Net income's up over 100% quarter on quarter or year on year. So, of course, we're talking about Q4 2021 versus Q4 2020. Now, despite being called Figaro Coffee, the vast majority of the revenues, north of 90%, are from Angel's Pizza. So let's keep in mind, this is a pizza business and not a coffee business. So, obviously, that it's not quite clear yet, based on their disclosure, where the money's coming from. They've cited franchising fees, but it's not quite clear. Is this all driven by delivery, right? Or is dine-in where this is coming from? So it's hard for me to really pinpoint what the theme working here is. But if we see this theme and say something like Jollibee, right, on a mega national scale, this surely will bring confidence back to so many investors who have been waiting for brick and mortar to come back in a big way.
Okay, exciting times, especially specifically for Figaro. But as you mentioned, even the other stocks are rotating towards the COVID stocks still, but also towards the reopening stocks. But nevertheless, quite uncertain times on which direction this is going. Thanks so much for your insights, Matt Cabang on AAA Equities.
Thank you, Dan.
Coming right up, don't have any other valid IDs besides the PSA-issued National Identification Card? No need to worry, as President Duterte orders agencies to officially recognize that card as sufficient proof of identity in all transactions.
More of that and other stories after the break. Stay with us.
You're still watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel.
Here are the other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. Heads up national ID holders. President Duterte has ordered all government agencies and private institutions to start accepting that card as a sufficient proof of identification. In an executive order, the president says the national ID will serve as the central identification platform for all citizens and resident aliens of the country. This means the national ID may be presented instead of a birth certificate in applications for marriage license, student driver permit, voters registration, and similar transactions. The EO says it may also be used when enrolling at public and private schools. The PSA reported last week that about 55 million Filipinos have already registered for the national ID system, but only 6 million cards have so far been released.
And this from the Philippine Star. BDO has reimbursed 94% of all customers affected by its previous hacking incident. This was confirmed by BSP Governor Ben Diokno. Diokno also said that both BDO and Union Bank are fully cooperating with the ongoing probe into the hacking scheme. Now recall that the country's largest lender has vowed to fully reimburse the financial losses of the over 700 account holders affected by the incident.
In a high-level economic and infrastructure meeting, the DOF says the Japanese government discussed extending an additional 30 billion yen or about 13.3 billion pesos in loans for the Philippines' pandemic response. The Finance Department says the proposed additional support will cover the funding for the Philippines' ongoing national vaccination program. The two countries also discussed Japan's public and private financing to the Philippines since 2017, which has reached 1.38 trillion yen or about 612 billion pesos. This exceeded the 1 trillion yen commitment made 5 years earlier.
Metro Pacific Tollways is constructing a 2.7 billion peso toll road in Indonesia. Parent company MPIC announced that an indirect subsidiary of MPTC in Indonesia held the groundbreaking for the project last February 7th. MPIC said the toll road project is expected to encourage economic growth by facilitating the fast delivery of goods across the southern peninsula of Sulawesi in Indonesia. The target completion for the toll road is in 2023. Presidential aspirant Bongbong Marcos and his running mate Sara Duterte are still the clear frontrunners in the SWS surveys in December and January.
But an expert says survey numbers don't usually translate to votes. Camille Samonte with the report.
In the December presidential survey of SWS commissioned by ADR Institute for Strategic and International Studies, Bongbong Marcos emerged as the top choice. More than a month later, Marcos is once again the frontrunner in the recent survey with 50% voter preference. He is followed by Vice President Leni Robredo at 19%, up by 5 percentage points. Manila Mayors Co Moreno and Senator Manny Pacquiao are tied at third place with 11% each. Senator Ping Lacson is at fifth place, while 3% are still undecided. Pacquiao is unfazed by the result of the survey. He insisted that surveys don't accurately reflect the voice of the public.
May survey na ba na tumama? May survey na ba tumama dito sa Pilipinas na yung nangunguna nananalo? Basta iparating natin sa taong bayan, sa mga mahihirap na tao na nandito si Manny Pacquiao para tulungan sila.
Lacson is also not discouraged with the recent survey. Leody de Guzman, on the other hand, is optimistic as long as he is given opportunity to present his platforms. The vice presidential race is a bit tight, with Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte getting 44% voting preference, followed by Senate President Tito Soto with 33%. Senator Kiko Pangilinan is third, followed by Dr. Willie Ong and Congressman Lito Atienza. 3% are still undecided. Soto is also unfazed with the results as he believes that in the end, competence and track record will prevail. For retired political science professor Clarita Carlos, survey results don't translate to actual votes.
I teach survey research in my graduate courses. And I don't think we should put that so central to our life. Conjectural lang lahat, no, sa pantaha. And, we don't bank on sa pantaha kasi lang yan. Parang jello yan eh. Alam mo, yun, nanginginig yun sa pantaha mo. Hindi siya solid.
For News 5, Camille Samonte, We Are One News.
And that's a first look into the business day this Thursday, February 17, 2022. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.